It is my third year in Sweden. I've lived for 1 year in Stockholm. Then I moved to Malmö for 1 year and then I came back to Stockholm. Hey, my name is Daria, and in this video I'd like to compare these two cities, to speak about their pluses and minuses, to discuss which city is a better fit for whom. So let's start. Cost of living. Let's jump straight to the practical stuff and let's start with rent. Chances are high that your rent in Malmö will be cheaper than in Stockholm, simply because it's a smaller city. If you plan to stay here long term, probably apartment that you will buy in Malmö will be cheaper than the same level apartment in Stockholm. Malmö has really lovely neighborhoods like Limhamn. There are old buildings, there are new buildings, there are charming old villas available at the same time. There are modern neighborhoods like Västrahamn, and there are really modern neighborhoods like Hilje that was built recently, and there are new well-built apartment buildings are available, and at the same time is pretty close to Denmark and the Öresund bridge, and on average the apartments in Malmö will be more affordable. For example, the apartment that we've rented in Malmö will probably be around 30% more expensive in Stockholm if we compare, the level of comfort you have. And actually, there are people who work in Copenhagen and they live in Malmö. Because, for example, if you compare like the price of rent in Copenhagen on one side and the price of rent in Malmö plus monthly travel pass across the bridge, it will still be cheaper than the rents in Copenhagen, especially if we speak about Danish salaries. And of course, finding a good apartment in Stockholm is, well, actually a journey, and it can be a challenge, especially if you have requirements like when you have a pet. Plus, first-hand rental queues in Stockholm are longer and more challenging than in Malmö, so finding an apartment in Malmö seems like a more doable thing, despite if it is first-hand or second-hand. Yes, Stockholm has quite high rental prices, but then again, it's a capital, and everyone knows that renting a good apartment in any capital is expensive. Maybe Paris or Madrid could compete with Stockholm in terms of rental costs. And unfortunately, in Stockholm, there are some apartment buildings that are quite, old buildings, built in 50s, 60s. And if they're not, renovated, it can be really uncomfortable to live here. Well, I had experience of living in an apartment that was built in 60s and it was not renovated. And unfortunately, despite the fact that the heaters worked amazing, they were hot during the winter. Unfortunately, the walls couldn't keep the heat, couldn't retain it, and because of that the apartment was really cold. You use the heater. Sophie, can you please stop doing it? Sophie, what are you doing? Why are you eating it? Sorry, I have a cat. For example, I was heating the room with the extra heater. I switch it off and in 15 minutes the room is cold again. That was actually a challenge for me because I was, living my cabbage life, because I was always wearing lots of layers of clothes to keep myself warm. But I think it was more of exclusion. It wasn't not a typical situation at all, I think. Because when we moved to Malmö, the apartment building was new and it was way warmer. Let's continue with grocery prices. I wouldn't say there is much difference in grocery prices if we compare Malmö and Stockholm, especially if we compare big supermarkets like ICA or Lidl or Coop Willys, because the prices are, I think, all over the country in big supermarkets are pretty similar. Prove me wrong if I'm wrong. If we speak about Systembolaget, of course it will be the same. You see these prices on the website and you see these prices in the stores. So do not expect Malmö to have cheaper prices, lower prices, just because it is a smaller city. No, we won't get it here. Unfortunately not. Let's speak about restaurant prices. I cannot say that I've seen like much difference. Maybe in Malmö there are several places that are a little less expensive, maybe because, you know, of the rent, but there are still a few very good cheap places, and there are still amazing fancy restaurants that would be kind of pricey, and that would be like a special occasion place to go. Public transport costs. Here the difference is quite noticeable, because in Stockholm we pay like 42 kronor one way, and in Malmö it will be 32 kronor one way. And especially if you use Skånetrafiken app and you travel like in any company, at least two people, you will pay 20% less, because when you buy a ticket in the Skånetrafiken app, you mention like my traveling team is 2 people, and you get a ticket in your phone that will be 20% cheaper. It works both for, you know, Skåne traveling, for the traveling via or Öresund Bridge. Unfortunately, we don't have this in Stockholm, and one point I really miss in Malmö, you could buy a 24 hours ticket, and it will cost you 2 ways ticket. It will be like 64 kronor for 24 hours. Of course, you can travel more using this ticket, but in Stockholm, I'm not sure about the price. It will be 100 something. Point 2, weather. My friend says that the climate in Malmö was designed to make you suffer. Summer is perfect across all Sweden, but Malmö's autumn and Malmö's winter hurt me the most. Remember, if the app shows you that it is windy in Malmö, do not go outside. Do not go outside. The wind will blow you away, even if you weigh 100 kilos. It will be hard to breathe in this wind. It will be hard to go in this wind. It will take away your cap. I've never worn my hats in Malmö because I don't want to chase them down the street. The wind in Malmö is so strong, it makes you question your life choices. And yeah, the rain. You live by the sea. Remember? Don't even try opening an umbrella in the rain. It is doomed. The raincoat in Malmö is a much safer choice. I've experienced rain and wind in Stockholm too, but I do not remember, a single day when the climate actually tried to steal my umbrella or my head or stopped me from breathing. Malmö also gets a lot of fog. It is beautiful, it is unusual for me. I've never lived in such a climate before. Once we went to the viewing spot to see the Öresund Bridge, and guess what? Have we seen it? No, we didn't see it. The fog never lifted that day, and we haven't seen the bridge that day. But it was kind of funny, when you arrive at the spot after an hour of walk, you come here and okay, somewhere here in the fog there is the bridge. Okay, but it is still really beautiful. It is still really unusual to see this much fog in the city. I've seen snow in Malmö for 2 times. The first one was when we arrived in Malmö. It was January. The second time was in February 2025. It was in the middle of the month. It was 14th or 15th of February. It was beautiful. It was really beautiful. Do not expect snowy winter here. You won't get it. It's the south part of Sweden. I've spent 2 winters in Stockholm, and both of them were pretty snowy. People who live here for many years, they say it is not always like that. You do not get this snow chaos every winter. From my experience, there are enough snow if you cannot imagine the winter without the snow. I once was caught in the snow chaos, and I went out of the store with some, things that I bought, and I got in the snow chaos, and I was trying to find the entrance in the underground. I think that I reminded myself a snowman. I really like when the winter has lots of snow and at the same time a blue sky, but I do not experience much of this winter here, unfortunately. And I cannot say that I do not like Swedish climate. Swedish climate is okay. Well, I'd like to have more sunshine in winter, but I can handle it. I can take vitamin D. If we speak about Malmö in summer, Malmö gets insanely hot summers. 25 Celsius feels like roasting a chicken in the oven. It is actually quite nice, especially if you're roasting your own drumsticks on Malmö's beach near the Turning Torso. But it actually really hard to have like some walks in the city in summer. In late spring and in summer, the air smells like a seaside. This salty, oceanic scent you associate with vacation. Malmö is warmer than Stockholm. Of course, it's not Spain, but cherry blossoms bloom earlier in Malmö. Spring arrives sooner, winter is milder, and overall, the climate isn't as northern as you'd expect from Scandinavia. Point 3. Work. Malmö has quite a few major companies. Several IKEA offices, many game studios, but Stockholm has more. For example, when I search for designer jobs in Stockholm, LinkedIn shows me around like 20 openings a day. But in Malmö, I might get 3 to 5, and half of them will actually be in Copenhagen. Stockholm simply has more jobs because it has more companies in it. Like it's just, well, it's obvious it is the matter of size of the city. I know it's a practical thing, but it is worth mentioning if you choose the city to live in. Of course, you can find a job in a smaller city, but it's just a bit harder. And many people in Malmö work for Copenhagen-based companies, which actually makes sense. More opportunities, higher salaries, but there is the issue of high Danish taxes, specific paperwork requirements, which is a whole separate topic. Point 4, the city size. This one is simple. Malmö is quite small city. Yes, it has like 300,000 people living here, but you can get anywhere in a pretty short time. Like even if you live on the outskirts, but near a train, you can be in the city center in about 15 minutes. My favorite thing about Malmö is that you can reach Copenhagen airport in under 30 minutes. In Stockholm, getting to the airport took me around an hour and a half because I refused to pay to the Arlanda Express, and the regular train, well, not so fast. Stockholm isn't exactly a huge city either. It is 2.5 million people if you count the whole metropolitan area. And if you lived in places like Tokyo, Moscow, or Beijing, Stockholm might even feel like a really small city. I get that for some, Stockholm might feel overwhelming, too fast-paced, while Malmö, in contrast, feels small, cozy, and slow city to live in. Malmö's small size actually has its advantages, but at the same time it also has its downsides. I cannot say that in Malmö there are lots of, interesting things. Yeah, there are a couple of nice parks, and the city center is charming, cute, with lots of old buildings, postcard-worthy places to take pictures of. I walked around Triangle and the city center quite a lot, and honestly, it feels like there is not much going on. Transport. The one thing I can sing praises about in Malmö is the local transportation. It's affordable by Swedish standards. Skånetrafikens application deserves a special compliment. It has a great map, very accurate routes, unlike Google Maps in Malmö. Yes, sometimes there are disruptions in Malmö's public transport. It can happen that you plan your trip for a specific train, you leave your home, and by the time you reach the station, something has happened to the train, and it's not running. It's not going anywhere. Also, if you are flying out of Copenhagen airport, I beg you, leave earlier, please. Trains may suddenly stop running, you'll be late, and your flight will leave without you. But in Malmö, by the way, the buses are excellent and the trains are really, really good. And the purple Pågatågen and the Öresund trains as well. Really comfortable, really convenient to use. Stockholm transport. I don't think there is a single blogger talking about Sweden who hasn't mocked Stockholm's public transport. Fortunately, I haven't encountered any major issues with the metro or trains. Overall, I would say that the local Stockholm transport deserves a solid 4 out of 5. Let's continue to point 6. Climate, terrain and nature. Malmö is flat. You won't have a task of like hauling in groceries up a hill because your home is literally on a hill. It's easier to ride a bike in Malmö. If you speak about terrain, I actually prefer Malmö's terrain over Stockholm's, because in Stockholm we lived on a hill, but on the flip side, Malmö doesn't have the rocks and cliffs of the Stockholm region. But in Malmö you will have fields. In Stockholm you will have forests. Both are beautiful. Everyone here chooses what they like more. I find it actually really hard to choose. And the capital has more northern nature, forests, cliffs, while Malmö feels very southern somehow. The climate is milder, but more like maritime. But there is a charm in each of them, I think. Point 7. Shops. Overall, it is quite clear from the size of the cities. In Stockholm, you'll find almost everything, both basic and non-basic. Big bookstores, not here either. Yes, there are some, and the city is slowly growing, but overall the selection is, well, quite small. Additionally, I love the second-hand culture in Sweden. I've been to a few second-hands in Malmö, and I admit I just didn't find any that appealed to me, because compared to Stockholm's second-hand stores, nothing really grabbed my soul here. And coming back to Stockholm, capital is a capital. You will always have here best museums, best bars, amazing exhibitions. The coolest concerts will probably be here. We are not talking about, Eurovision, which took place in Malmö in 2024. But the final of the Swedish, Melody Festival is held right here in Stockholm. Point 8. Safety. Malmö has a somewhat poor reputation of being an unsafe city. In 2024, Malmö ranked 76 in the list between the American city of Portland and the Iran's Tehran. According to Swedish police, 28.7% of Malmö residents feel unsafe walking alone late at night. I cannot say so because the neighborhood we lived in was really safe, and I had experience of meeting my friend from the train at 1 a.m. at night, and it was still safe, but the statistics are statistics. Stockholm, on the other hand, ranked 157th in this list, which is a bit better. However, we still see in news the tragedies that happen, unfortunately, in both the cities. Of course, there are safe and unsafe areas in both of the cities. And it is always a good idea to check statistics before renting or buying a property. And however, tragedies happen even in a tiny, peaceful Lund, a suburb of Malmö, but which is quite shocking actually, of course, because Lund's calm, easygoing atmosphere, and you wouldn't expect anything like that happening here. Point 9, which I called Beyond Basics, I would like to speak about some extra stuff in this part. Nearby Malmö, there is a wonderful, shining Copenhagen. And there are so many sakura trees that you will be amazed when you see them all blooming in the spring. It is stunning sight along Lingelinje. I'll show you the place on the map. Also the Copenhagen airport. It is convenient to fly from here to lots of European cities. But despite having Copenhagen so close to Malmö, please take note that the tickets to this train, you'll have to pay around 300 kronor per person, 2 ways. 9.2. Lund. Especially it is wonderful in summer, charming, magical, Harry Potterish, Hogwarts-like Lund. Especially in June when you have, the bushes, the rose bushes blooming all over the Lund, which is amazing and beautiful. I highly recommend checking out the local university, visiting Domkyrkan, the cathedral, seeing the working old clock. Make sure to go at 12 or at 3 p.m. To Domkyrka to see these clocks working. And my favorite stationery store in Lund is Lexis Paper. I let the screenshots for you 9.3. Stockholm. Stockholm is a really beautiful city. It's like very, postcard-like. When I lived there, whenever I visited and walked through the city, I would constantly stop to take photos. It is so beautiful. In summer, it is wonderful. It is sparkling with water. In winter, it might be dusted with snow. In November, it will be decorated with Christmas stars. In spring, sakura trees begin to bloom. 9.4 differences in Swedish language. It is still the same language, but the accents differ. In Skåne, there is a cool R rolling sound. You can immediately tell it apart from the speech you hear on the news, from the broadcasters, or in the trains when you see the sound, the speaker telling about the next station. I don't agree that this accent is harder to understand than the central Swedish, but I think it's unique, cute, and really, nice to hear. It's like it's something soft for me to hear, I think. And point 10, instead of conclusions. When we moved from Stockholm to Malmö, I didn't have, any big expectations. I have read about crime, I have read about how the city is small, but in reality, after living here for over a year, I would say that Malmö is a cool city. It is a nice city with cool people, with wonderful Lund nearby, with normal northern weather that's becoming, less northern because it's, the southern part of the country. And I have to say that I'm really grateful for that experience. Stockholm is great. It is beautiful, it is bustling, and in some places it is even a little louder than I'd like it to be. There are more chances to find work here if you're like an expat coming to Sweden. There are more amazing concerts, museums, and events. Which city I would recommend to live in? Well, honestly, I'd pick Lund for myself. In fact, it is a very interesting experience to live in different cities of the country and to be able to compare them for yourself. Well, where to live? Choose what resonates with you. That's it for today. Sending you hugs and kisses. Bye bye. What were I talking about? Yeah.